You've heard the conventional view. Now prepare yourself to hear the other side. High school teachers Mike Margison and Justin Spears bring you the alternative view you didn't get in the classroom. Now here they are, Margison and Spears.
Well, good Tuesday evening out there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side. I am your host, Justin Spears. I'll be with you this evening, riding solo tonight. My partner in crime, Mr. Margison, was unable to make it for a recording this week. He had some stuff going on, and so I am riding it on my own this episode here, which I don't mind doing every now and then. I appreciate all the work that Mike does on the broadcasts and everything. But you know what? Sometimes you get a chance to produce a show and give somebody else a break, and that feels good as well. So welcome to the show, The Other Side. If you're a new listener, we welcome you to the show. Hope you're enjoying. If you've been listening now, this is our 47th episode. All of our shows are broadcast live via our YouTube channel, and you can listen live. You can get access to that by going to YouTube and searching The Other Side Podcast. The channel's name is Mike Justin. You'll find our live stream there when we are broadcasting, and you can listen to all of our archived episodes there as well. We are a part of social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We have our Facebook page is facebook.com/TOS_podcast. You can find us there. You can search for me personally on Facebook, Justin Spears 4. I'm on Twitter at Justin Spears 4, and we have at TOS podcast on Twitter as well. The show is on demand in a number of different formats, and we've done this not to be confusing or to just try to throw it out everywhere, but we want to make it as accessible as possible. So you can get the show on demand. As soon as we're done broadcasting here, I will download the file and make it available via iTunes, via Google Play podcasts. You can get us on a podcasting app known as Spreaker. If you search on any of those three platforms, The Other Side with Margison and Spears. You have to search all that. The Other Side with Margison and Spears. You'll be able to find, again, our library of shows there to download if you like to listen on the go or on demand there as well. We are also a part of the Cerberus Radio Network, and we are super excited about the work that's being done with this broadcast team. This is an internet media broadcast team that consists of a number of different on-air talent. We have Suzanne Sherman, who has a number of shows, of which include the Wasatch Report. That's one that she does that focuses on stuff out of Utah primarily. She has the Case in Point show that she just started, which is where she, as a former lawyer, will take a prospective case and go through it, sometimes with a special guest. Her first show was on Marbury v. Madison, where she had Dr. Kevin Gutzman on to break down that case. And then she has the Mark and Suzanne show, which she's joined by Mr. Mark Kreslins, a terrific mind, just a terrific person. I've gotten to know him a little bit through Facebook, and just a wonderful man, a great brother in Christ, and just a terrific individual. So he's got a great historical mind, governmental mind as well. So the Mark and Suzanne show can be heard over there as well as the Paradigm Shift with Jeff Johnson and the Dan Bailey show, the Renegade and Rambler show. Sometimes when Jeff and Dan have time together, they will put together a show known as the Renegade and Rambler show. So all of that can be heard on the Cerberus Radio Network YouTube page as well, or you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. So a lot going on, a lot of different ways that we try to make this content accessible. If you're, trying to figure out what's going on with the government today, what's going on, with our history, the Constitution, economics. There's a number of different things. We've got some exciting things that we're working on with this network as well. We're talking about moving forward with a website. We're even talking about moving forward with producing some curriculum that if you are in the homeschool market, you might be interested in learning about here in the coming months. We're talking about packaging some content content potentially for purchase. So just a lot of great things that are going on. Very, very excited to be a part of that movement there. So having gotten all of that out of the way, I don't want to leave out one last area in which you can catch the show. I am broadcasting currently out of central Indiana, the west side of Indianapolis. I work in Crawfordsville, Indiana, which is about a half hour west of where I am. And we are fortunate enough to have been picked up by a local radio station out of Crawfordsville, 92.1, 1550 AM, WCVL, WCVLAM.com. Mr. Dave Peach and the gang out there, we really, really appreciate their support and trying to help us increase our listenership in our geographic area locally. You can hear our show Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. So every show that we record during the week, that Saturday morning, that show is rebroadcast on their network. And again, that's 92.1 FM, 1550 AM out of Crawfordsville, or WCVLAM.com worldwide. So a lot of different ways in which you can hear the show. And please do us a favor, if you could, like, subscribe, comment, anything that you can do to help increase our influence and fingerprint online. We are certainly in the mode of trying to increase the number of listeners and viewers that we have to our shows. We would greatly, greatly appreciate any and all feedback, input, comments, likes, and everything through social media. All right. I know that was a mouthful, but let's get to the content for this evening. And I want to start off the show by kind of going through something that I experienced this week in conversation that I had through social media. We've talked before in the past about the platform of social media and how sometimes dialogue and being able to express your opinions, and if you're having an exchange with somebody online, what is that dialogue like? Is it helpful? Is it just, one side constantly trying to bang their point home, not being open-minded to what the other side has to say? And listen, guys, that's why we have the show, The Other Side. We're trying to present, no matter what it is, whatever the content is, whether we're going through information that, you would get in school, through textbooks, through the media, traditional media, we're trying to present another side of those topics. And that's to get you to think about it beyond what you just might hear in the news. And so that kind of feeds in here a little bit with what I want to jump into here. I had on another Facebook platform earlier this week had reposted an article from The Blaze. Now, I'm not a huge Glenn Beck fan, but I do subscribe, as I subscribe to media outlets on all sides, his Blaze Network Facebook page. And so from time to time, I'll see stories pop up and I'll read through them. Well, there was a story that popped up earlier this week about this potential congresswoman, I believe out of New York or New Jersey. We've talked about her before. She's the avowed socialist candidate that is running for Congress. I believe her last name is Ocasio-Cortez. I may be mispronouncing that. But she had a interview, I believe, that she did on PBS NewsHour, and was talking about Israel, and just kind of talking a little bit about the Palestinian side of things, and how that doesn't get enough credence in the American media, that they need to talk more about what's going on with Palestine and the aggression of Israel. And that's basically in a nutshell what she had tweeted about and then was being asked about. And to the credit of the woman who was doing the interview, which I forget who it was at this point, she pushed her a little bit on that and asked her to kind of define a little bit of what she meant by some of the things that she had said. And, I think she was caught off guard by that. She wasn't prepared for it, which, okay, fair enough. If you weren't, if you went on being ready to talk about something else and you veer off into something you haven't really prepared for, I'm okay with that. But she tries to then work her way through supporting her position, which she really does a very poor job of doing. And the headline says that she was confronted over an anti-Israel tweet and admits she has no idea what she's talking about. And essentially what she says here in this article or in this interview is, that she's no geopolitical expert or something like that, which then, the Blaze writer took to say, hey, you've got no idea what you're talking about. So I reposted this and I titled this, "This Should Surprise No One, Color Me Shocked." And I had a couple of people that chimed in on this article and kind of attacked the headline and the article itself. And one person in particular really focused in on the statements that this lady had made and said nothing that she said is inaccurate. To which I kind of pushed back on and said, but the problem is, and this is, I think, what the article was trying to point out, is while she may know what is going on over there, she's not knowledgeable on the topic. And this got into a big back and forth that I had with this gentleman, him going on saying that, and he just kind of kept hammering home what she's saying is not inaccurate. And basically going on to say her explanation is that settlements that are increasing in some of the areas and places around Palestine and Israel, Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their homes and houses, which is one of the claims that she made in talking about this from the Palestinian side. I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying that that is factually inaccurate. I honestly don't know. I don't know enough about the current situation over there to make an educated statement on that. But let's just for a moment say that that is true, that is happening. Okay, fine. But can you explain it, right? Are you knowledgeable enough on it to be able to then go on and make a further claim about what is going on or why this is going on? And you know what? If you're going to be in U.S. Congress, I don't think it should be any of your issue. I think the honest way to answer this question is what goes on between Israel and other nations is Israel's business. But I understand foreign diplomacy, things of that nature. We're engaged, we're involved, what have you. Okay, I'll even play along with that. But if you're going to meddle, if you're going to get involved with that, if you're going to have an opinion on it, you need to be knowledgeable on it. So I was trying to get this gentleman to understand that being able to read news and know what is going on doesn't mean that you understand the topic. The issue here, much like what we would see later on with her economic policies, is she has a lot of talking points. She must read a lot of news. She must be connected with people who are in her ear that are passing on talking points to her. But it's very clear from what I've seen so far from her that when pressed and when really having to explain and understand the foundation for her belief system, she can't do it. She had another snafu just earlier today or yesterday where she was made some comment or some tweet about unemployment numbers being so low because people are working multiple jobs. That's not how that works. That's a pretty fundamental thing to understand there. So it's very clear that her ideology is built on sand. It's built on a shifting surface of being fed either news lines or talking points from someone. And that's what really all I was trying to get this gentleman to understand is that, I can say E equals MC squared, or I could talk about the Pythagorean theorem. But if you were to ask me to then explain what that means or what can you do with it, I'm at a loss. I've got nothing. So really, what is my head knowledge being able to do to help explain or teach or use that knowledge that I may or may not have to any good, right? And that's dangerous. That's the big takeaway here with this, ladies and gentlemen, is that this kind of thing is very dangerous when we get people who are going to be leaders in our government making these decisions, again, whether or not we think they should be doing that or not. The bottom line is they are. I at least want somebody in there who's knowledgeable enough and understands what is going on deeper than just having talking points or having ideology lines fed to them. And so again, I want to tie that back in to, again, why we do this show. This show is meant for you to listen to and hear a perspective that you're not going to get from the traditional education system, that you're not going to get from the mainstream media, and that you're not going to get from casual conversations that you may have. It doesn't matter what political ideology we're talking about, left, right, whatever. And listen, that was on a libertarian board. That was on a libertarian group that conversation occurred there. So again, we want to challenge you to think these things through. And again, what we provide to you is really just a starting point. A lot of times what we're providing you is hopefully we're provoking you to go out and learn more about what's happening, no matter what the topic is. And so again, I think that's an important lesson to be learned here with this story is, understanding how important it is to not just have that head knowledge or, oh yeah, I heard him talk about that, or I was fed that line there, or I read that on this. Go and dig into it. And that's going to transition us in to our second point for this episode. As you guys may have all heard at this point, President Trump was in Helsinki, Finland, earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday, yesterday, where he had this summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And again, this was a much anticipated step toward diplomacy, something, excuse me, that I think this president, whether you agree or disagree with his political ideology, as you look at what he is doing in terms of foreign policy, at least he is being proactive. Again, you may not agree with everything that he's trying to do or that he has done, but at least he's not sitting on his hands, waiting for somebody to pick up the phone and call him. He's out there in the trenches. From what all appearances is that he's out there doing this stuff. So he goes to Helsinki, Finland, and he has the summit, which, again, depending on which news agency you listen to and the reports that you read, various different things were discussed. It sounded like they had conversations over Syria and ISIS. It sounded like they had conversations over Israel. It sounded like they had, obviously, conversations over the 2016 elections, which was the big takeaway from the press here this week, was over the reaction to what was a pointed question, saying that, listen, are you going to stand here, President Trump, and tell us Americans that you are going to refute U.S. intelligence reports that by and large accuse and say that Russia was guilty of meddling in the 2016 election and that they worked to help get you elected into office? And so President Trump, to kind of summarize, basically stood up and said, listen, I've read those reports. I listened to President Putin. I have no reason to believe that he had a reason to. And so that created a firestorm from the left and the right, but mostly from the left. And there was one voice in particular, that of John Brennan, who came out, the former CIA director, and basically flat out said this rises to the level of treason. Now, that's a pretty serious accusation level against the sitting U.S. president, to say that this goes to the level of treason. And so when you think about, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, let's go to the Constitution. Article 3, Section 3, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses. It goes on to talk about that in a little bit more detail, how it's treated through Congress there. So clearly, obviously, not levying war. I guess where this would probably be falling under would be the adhering to their enemies, which, again, I believe is a huge stretch here and completely off base. There were many others who stepped out and spoke out against what President Trump had said there. As you can imagine, it was the typical, group of people that were coming out against him. I believe there were a couple of other former workers in the U.S. intelligence agency that had come out and spoken out against what had gone on, and many members of Congress, both on the left and the right. And listen, all I can say is this is nothing but political posturing. Coming out and issuing these statements are nothing but a political posture. They're a way to make the congressmen and women look good to the constituents, that they're standing up and pushing back against what President Trump has said. I don't know, obviously, what is going on in the heads of people who would make these types of accusations. Again, whether you agree or disagree with what the president is doing, to say that this rises to the level of treason, I think is, again, nothing but political posturing. Now, I want to, though, get a little bit deeper in on this, because I think this is something that, when you look at the grand scheme of where we are today with our system of government, and when we talk about the people's sentiment against Washington, D.C., this goes back to the whole drain the swamp. This goes back to something that I've talked about in previous episodes of The Other Side, where we see, for example, a very low approval rating of Congress. Everybody always likes to talk about the approval rating of the president, but you've got low approval ratings in Congress. You just have low approval ratings of our government in general. And that is, when these Congress people and these U.S. intelligence agents come out and make these claims and these accusations against what the president has said and done here, we have to ask the question: who is it that they're claiming is being damaged by the president doing this? And if you didn't watch any of the press conference, I'd encourage you to go back and at least watch some of the highlights. I'm sure you'll be able to find the video online and just watch it from an unbiased perspective before you go and you do any reading on the topic, before you go and you get any commentary beyond this. I'm trying to present this in the most unbiased way, one way or the other, as far as, approval or disapproval. Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I really don't have an opinion on it at this point in time. I guess if you were going to press me on it and say, well, what do you think? I would fall in the category, and I have seen some people that have said this. I think Rand Paul came out and said this along with his dad, Ron, that's, said basically, look, what negative can come out of having open dialogue and negotiations, right? With what was said and what appears, at least from what we saw from the press conference, again, the fruit will be in what happens in time over time, but at least from how it's being perceived from what was seen, essentially this is better than, isolation. And a warming up of the words from a distance. So again, going back to this, I want to ask the question: who is being hurt by this? Is it you and me? Is it the American people? Is it the average citizen who's working in the Midwest, or just the average Joe American? Are you really threatened or hurt by the president standing up and saying, I see no reason to believe that President Putin or any Russian organizations were involved in helping to rig the elections of 2016? And we'll go back here just as a quick sidebar on this too. I've made vocal statements about this before in the past. I still have yet to find any tangible definition of what may have been done. Now, I will say I have heard people say that, the bots idea on Twitter, where certain things, I guess, maybe were boosted, or things that were made to make Hillary Clinton look in a negative light. Listen, I think she did that all on her own. I don't think any Russian bot account on Twitter really influenced anybody. I don't think anybody probably read these accounts and go, oh man, I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but now that I've read this Twitter bot account, clearly I'm going to vote Trump. I just have a hard time believing that anything like that happened. So, okay, short of mind-numbing and brainwashing people, what else was done? Are we claiming that Russian physical people came over and jumped into the polls and pulled levers for Donald Trump at a disproportionate rate? Are we claiming that they went around and fixed the rolls to say that certain numbers of people had voted for Trump that really didn't? I don't get it, right? We've heard time and time again that Clinton won the popular vote, so clearly it doesn't appear that was the case. I just don't understand the merits of these claims. And again, obviously I'm not in the intelligence agencies. I don't have access to that data. I'm just kind of going based off of intuition and gut feeling here. But again, I think this is all smoke and mirrors thing. I think it's a way to distract you. And this is where I want to start to wrap up with this, is when I go back and ask the question, who is damaged the most by this comment? It's the deep state. These intelligence agencies, ladies and gentlemen, are the agencies that are pulling the strings. These are the people, the groups that have the sway, the pull, the influence. People always talk about in elections money and getting money out of elections, and I agree. I think that in a large way does damage and minimize the vote of people of this country. But when we look at who is really hurt by this type of a statement being issued by a president, Again, it's not you or I. It's not the working American. It's not the guy that's going about his daily business and tending to his family, or, trying to run a business or working his 9 to 5 or whatever it is. It's these organizations that have built their empire up off of what? Up off of discord, right? They don't want peace. What would that mean? I was having a conversation with somebody the other day where we were talking about medicines, right? And we were talking about diseases like cancer and AIDS. And we said, could you imagine if there really was a cure for cancer? Think of the amount of people who would be out of a job. Think about how fundamentally changed the healthcare industry would be. You would have tons and tons of research dollars that would go away. You would have tons and tons of doctors and organizations and charity events and everything. That's a huge part of our economy that would go away. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not in any way, shape, or form sitting here and telling you that somebody is sitting on a cure for cancer or sitting on a cure for AIDS. But you do have to understand, right, that once that comes, that's going to be a huge disruptor. So now take that over into the foreign diplomacy arena. If there's peace between Russia and the US, if there's peace between North Korea and the US, who's hurt by that? The military industrial complex. All of the McMansions that have been built in the DC area, those people go bye-bye. There's no need for contractors. There's no need for agencies to go and perform recon work and intel work and reports to be written and missiles to be built and all of the other bits of work that go along in this area. It all goes away. So people are threatened by that, right? People who have been lifers, that's who's speaking out. Politicians who get to control the purse strings on the fighting and where resources get allocated. If there's no Cold War or warm war or hot war, right? Where's the money going to go? We're going to be faced with all kinds of problems of bringing soldiers home and reallocating resources. This is a huge issue. And so when you hear these people crying out and screaming and fighting to where you would rise to the level of accusing the president of treason, you have to stop and ask yourself the question, why would somebody go to the lengths to say that? They must feel really threatened. And so again, as we conclude with this episode here, I just want to encourage you that as you come across these stories, it's easy to take the approach, as I started off the episode, and read through the headlines or even read through the story. Maybe you'll get past the headline and maybe you'll actually click on the story and open it up and read through it. And you're getting a narrative. You're getting a perspective from the media, the same media that feasts off of chaos, off of trouble, off of war, right? So you've got that aspect of it as well. What are they going to do? They're going to present a side that is going to look negatively upon peace. We have not, as Churchill said, known peace in our time. We have not been in a time in my lifetime, and I was born in 78, that I can remember. I mean, certainly post 9/11, it's been continual, perpetual war, and the state thrives off of that. They live off of it like a parasite, like a leech, because if you take that out of the equation, what need is there for an intelligence agency? What need is there for a military industrial complex? So I want to encourage you, as you think these things through, think about, where is this person coming from? What angle are they really playing here? All right, that's going to do it for our radio audience. For those of you that are listening on 92.1, 1550 AM, I want to thank you for tuning in this week. You've been listening to The Other Side with Justin Spears. All right, for those of you that are listening on demand or on YouTube, we usually go into a little bit of bonus time here. And what I wanted to use this bonus time for, I don't want to go too deep. A half hour of me is plenty, but I did want to kind of go through and talk about a couple of things that circling back to some items that we've talked about here over the last couple of episodes. Mike and I had focused really heavily on education. And he and I both being educators, we tend to kind of attract to stories that relate to the public education system. And he and I are both pretty jaded with the system, as I think he would, and we have accurately said in the last couple of episodes that we've had. We don't see a solution out there for reform. So what we've called for is an actual abolishment of the system. You know, we need to find ways to take back the education of the youth of this country. What we have going on as we get kids that go into classrooms that'll be firing up here over the next couple of weeks is not education. It's glorified babysitting. And so what we are going to attempt to do here is we are going to be, over the course of the coming months, Mike and I are going to be creating some curriculum. Now, we don't have all the details hashed out, so I don't want to get too much into selling this, but I did want to kind of put a call out there as well. If you listen to this show and you have a passion for education, doesn't matter if you're a parent, it doesn't matter if you're a current student, if you're homeschooled, that certainly would help. If you've ever done homeschooling as a parent, obviously that would help. Or obviously, if you're a public education teacher and you have some of the same feelings, maybe you've kind of felt it a little bit, but maybe you're not as far along, you still have reservations, you still think this system has some good to it and it needs to be preserved and it just needs some tweaking and reform. I would welcome input and feedback from any angle here on this. We're going to be putting together a couple of different things. Number one, we're going to be packaging some curriculum for homeschoolers. We, again, don't know the actual format of this yet. We have some components to it. We're going to be packaging that and working on it over the course of the coming months. So please make sure that you stay tuned and be on the lookout for that. We'll be, as we roll out our website, I'm sure putting information up on that. Mike and I are also going to attempt, this might come a little bit later, to write a book, a resource and information book for anybody who is potentially thinking about homeschooling, but maybe always kind of thought, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I wouldn't feel equipped to be able to actually carry out lessons and teach these things. We're going to put together some information for that market as well. So we've got some exciting things happening on that front. We're also going to potentially be looking at creating some more resources for the other side, some daily maybe news bits. We can give you a quick overview of what's going on in the media, again, from the other side perspective. So we're really going to forward with this, and along with our partners at the Cerberus Radio Network, we've got some great input and resources over there. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, Suzanne and Jeff and Dan, Mark, and our special appearances by people such as Dr. Kevin Gutzman. We've got some other shows, Mike Meharry's podcast through the 10th Amendment Center, Peter Schiff's Gold Report, Brush Fires of Freedom, which is a show done by Sean Hoffine out of Arizona. There's a number of different types of programming that you can get. Suzanne Sherman, who lives out in Utah, former practicing attorney, has embraced kind of going off the grid, so to speak. I don't know if Suzanne would tell you that's exactly accurate, but more as a self-sustaining lifestyle, not relying so much on the government and organizational benefits to live her life. Talking about homesteading, talking about preparedness. We're going to start to really ratchet up the efforts to put curriculum together that you can consume. we're going to try to keep as much of it free as we can, but we may have some stuff that we put behind a paywall. We'll just kind of wait and see how it goes. So again, I kind of wanted to introduce all this to you to say that we are putting out the back call for anybody who would like to help be a part of that, at least from our side of the curriculum building, the schooling education aspect. Again, we would really appreciate any info, feedback. We're doing a lot of our work open source, so we'd be more than happy to share any information that we've got currently going. You know, Mike and I have some documents that we've worked off of and will continue to work on that I think we would be absolutely fine with sharing out, so you can kind of see where we're coming from and give you the access to be able to contribute any input that you have on that. So exciting times going on with the other side and the Cerberus Radio Network. So again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of The Other Side. I hope that you've appreciated the perspective that was brought here. And again, as I always say, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're just here to encourage you to think. Certainly not looking for you to necessarily be yes men and yes women and just, you know, take what we say as the gospel, but it's just meant to get you to think about things from a different perspective and to hopefully encourage you to go beyond maybe what your current knowledge level is. I know certainly in prepping for these shows, we push ourselves beyond what we know and what we've learned about the topics in which we discuss. And, you know, again, that's a great benefit to be, you know, knowledgeable as I go back to what I started the show with, beyond having a foundation that is on shifting sand, one that isn't firm, one that isn't complete, one that is built on hearsay and just talking points and, you know, maybe some factual knowledge, but just surface level, not really fully comprehending or understanding the ramifications of what that knowledge means as far as application goes. So again, just to wrap up, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, input, anything at all, we would greatly, greatly appreciate and welcome that. Again, just to run through the social media platforms real quickly here, you can find us on Facebook. Again, we're at TOS Podcast. We're on Twitter. You can find me individually at Justin Spears 4 on Twitter, Facebook.com/Justin Spears 4. You can search for my name and find me as well. The Cerberus Radio Network, please go over and give those guys a like. That's Facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network, all one word there. You can find us on our YouTube pages, both of us, The Other Side with Margison and Spears, and the Cerberus Radio Network YouTube page as well. So just tons and tons of resources out there, a little bit different than what you're going to hear even from some other alternative forms of media out there. So again, thank you so much for tuning in this week. And until next week, you've now heard The Other Side.
Thanks for listening. And remember, you're not fully informed until you've heard the other